Welcome back to another video. We're still going through Luke's Gospel, and we're following on immediately from last week's reading in Luke 17, where we finished at verse 10. So we're picking up at verse 11 and going through to verse 19 this week. Now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus travelled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." When he saw them, he said, "Go, show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well." On the day when we first suspected that Debbie might be pregnant with our first child, we were on leave and we were in Hyde Park attending a concert by an artist she had wanted to see for a long time, the now deceased Meatloaf. I won't detain you with my thoughts about that concert because they're not particularly kind, but of course he performed a number of his famous songs, especially those from the Bat Out of Hell album, not least the one with lyrics that say, "I want you, I need you, but there ain't no way I'm ever gonna love you. Now don't be sad, 'cause 2 out of 3 ain't bad." Well, I guess Meatloaf did better than Jesus here. 2 out of 3, 66.6%, versus 1 out of 10, 10%. 1 out of 10 ain't bad? Maybe that's something to remember when we worry about lack of response to the gospel. But what I mainly want to explore this week is what this story tells us about the ministry of Jesus and how we respond to it. 3 things. Firstly, the compassion of Jesus, which crosses boundaries. There are a couple of ways in which the ministry of the compassion of Jesus crosses boundaries in this story. As the lepers cry out, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us," his heart is roused to compassion. And the first boundary is one of distance. You will notice the lepers cried out in a loud voice because they were not that near him. Why? Because it was socially prescribed that lepers stayed away from the rest of the population. So they have to shout. Think about all the COVID-19 measures of the last couple of years, especially before there were any vaccines. Keeping 2 meters apart, the scandal of insufficient personal protective equipment for hospital staff. These were all required to keep us as safe a distance as possible from transmitting the virus to one another. And so that happened with lepers. But imagine you had to live with those restrictions for the whole of the rest of your life. Imagine too that you had to live outside the boundary of your hometown, where your only company was with your fellow sufferers. Think about the effects that would have on you, emotionally, socially, and in other ways. the compassion of Jesus crosses that. So there's that distance that's crossed by Jesus because of the leprosy. The second boundary is about the distance created by geographical boundaries, or borders perhaps is a better word. We read here that Jesus was travelling along the border between Samaria and Galilee. Is it so surprising then to hear later in the story that one of the lepers was a Samaritan? Now, it's our task to carry on the compassion of Jesus today. How tempting it is for us to keep it within the boundaries of the church family, with people we know, where we usually feel safe and where we hope and expect people will support us. Now, that is a rose-tinted view of the church, because some of the most virulent criticisms, character assassinations and uses of defamatory language that I've ever come across have come inside the church. But we need to be ready to cross boundaries with Christian compassion, just as Jesus did. To be like him, we must take risks and demonstrate his compassion, not just in the church, but in the world also. That's why in our village, the Baptist Church is starting a course to help people face and overcome financial difficulties. That's why our Anglican friends in the village have bereavement ministries, and why they also run a community fridge to stop food waste. That's why one Saturday a month you can see a group of local Christians in our village high street offering healing on the streets. That's why the Methodist Church runs a clothes bank. But just because things are happening like that, showing the compassion of Jesus in the world, doesn't mean we can be complacent. We can't sit and think, well, so-and-so and so-and-so are operating something from the church. We don't need to get involved. Oh, yes, we do. Do we already know someone or a group of people outside the church who need the compassion of Jesus? Or is his Holy Spirit prompting us to care for others? Jesus went into the broken places to meet broken people with the love of God. Is that what we are doing? So firstly, the compassion of Jesus crosses boundaries. Secondly, the ministry of Jesus is to the whole person. How does Jesus heal? Here, in this story, is no laying on of hands. There's none of him speaking to the illness and rebuking it. All he says to the lepers is, "Go, show yourselves to the priests." And the healing happens while they are on their way to the priests. Now, for one thing, just the fact that Jesus heals a physical condition puts paid to the idea that we should confine ourselves to what is spiritual and not concern ourselves with physical or material matters. It's a criticism leveled at the church at other times, when we get involved in politics or when we have to spend time on practicalities. But we cannot divorce the physical or the social from the spiritual. They are all interlinked. Christians speak of the human body as what we call a psychosomatic unity. That's your long words for this week. But all that means is really that the soul and the body are united. They're bound together in one human person. And the mere act of healing shows Jesus' concern for every part of his creation. It's a concern he calls us to share. And why in particular does he send the lepers to the priests? You may know that in that society, the priests were the ones who could declare someone cured from a socially excluding disease like leprosy. If they did declare them cured, then a sufferer's social isolation, as I described in the last point, was over. No longer would they suffer socially and emotionally by being cut off from human contact. They could embrace their family again and experience the healing power of touch. They could take their place in society again. They could have the dignity of earning a living once more. They could share in worship with others as they had done once before. The healing of Jesus is physical and social as well as spiritual. Thus, our expression of his ministry in the world today needs to be similar. Of course, we have to be careful not to be just another social agency. We need to find ways to show why we are showing God's love in material and social ways. We need to express the reason for the hope that is in us, as the New Testament says. Now, equally, I'm not suggesting that we only give material and social help on condition of people hearing a gospel presentation. I've heard of churches do that, and it smacks of manipulation. But I am saying that there should be something about the way we freely offer the love and mercy of God to all and sundry, regardless of whether they share our faith or not, that should end up prompting questions about why we should do such a thing. So I have a church that runs an annual Christmas party about a couple of Sunday afternoons before Christmas, one afternoon for local lonely and elderly people. And we've always found at that event that we offer it free of charge, and people have said, let me give a donation towards the costs. How easy it would be for us to say to our guests on that afternoon, well, actually, there is a reason we offer this event for free, and it has to do with the God we believe in. We believe he freely offers his love to us, and we don't pay our way into heaven. We could say a little something that Sunday afternoon that could leave people thinking about the gospel as a result of what we've offered them. So, the compassion of Jesus crosses boundaries. The ministry of Jesus is to the whole person. And the third and final thing I want to say is this, that faith in Jesus needs to be active. Now, to be scrupulously fair, you could say that all 10 lepers put their faith into action because they all obey Jesus' command to go and show themselves to the priests. And as they obey that command, their healing comes. But, as we heard, only one of them returned to Jesus, thanking him and praising God. And that one was not a Jew, but a Samaritan. someone with decidedly dodgy theological convictions in the views of typical Jews. He had God and where and how to worship God all wrong. Yet he is held up by Jesus as the exemplar of faith. So, what is the difference between that one Samaritan who is healed and the 9 Jews who are healed? Surely the difference is gratitude. That's why the Samaritan returns. The other 9 have got what they want out of Jesus and off they go. How easy it is for us in the church to treat faith in Jesus in the same way that the 9 Jewish ex-lepers did, with their conventional, correct beliefs about God. If we're not careful, we end up using faith to get what we want and need out of it without bowing at the feet of Jesus as the heretical Samaritan did. One obvious area where this problem manifests itself is in those people who complain after a morning church service that they never got much out of it. They came to get, not to give, but worship is a giving experience. The same people and others will also complain that they are not being fed spiritually. Yet, what are they doing to feed themselves? Yes, the shepherd is meant to feed the sheep, but in the process, the sheep themselves learn how to feed. But some people in our churches just want everything put on a plate for them, and that is selfish and unchristlike. Instead, a true active faith, like that of the healed Samaritan, is one that is characterized by gratitude. When we know what Jesus Christ has done for us, the faithful response is gratitude. Gratitude seen in our commitment to regular worship. Gratitude in nurturing our own personal connection with God in prayer daily. Gratitude in recognizing that as Jesus laid down his life for us, so the fitting response is for us to lay our lives down for him. And that is why a take attitude is so unworthy of so-called Christians. But the grateful faith of someone who lays down their life for the one who died for them will not stay in splendid isolation in the church, but will cross boundaries with the love of God for others. And that same laid down life in gratitude will show that love of God in physical, material and social ways, all because of the spiritual connection with Christ. So, are we among the 9 out of 10? Or are we the 1 out of 10? I pray that there are lots of 1 out of 10s out there. That's all for this week. I hope you'll be able to join the next video too. God bless you all. Bye-bye.